Hey folks, Danny here, and welcome to a very special week here on GameSpot.com. This week is the 20th anniversary of the site's launch, and to celebrate, we've produced a bunch of articles and videos looking back at the games, memories, and people that made up the past 2 decades on GameSpot. Today I'm starting the ball rolling with games. Not just any games, but the best games. Over the past 20 years, tens of thousands of games have been reviewed here on GameSpot, but only a handful have received our coveted Game of the Year award. Some of these are classics, some of these not so much. But each of these games made enough of an impression on the site's staff at that time to be immortalized on today's list. We got 20 years to cover, so let's get the ball rolling. GameSpot's first ever Game of the Year just barely scraped in. Released on New Year's Eve of 1996, the game wasn't even reviewed by GameSpot until late January, but somehow still managed to grab the Game of the Year. Earning a score of 9.6 out of 10, Diablo was the first in a storied series of action role-playing games. Of course, this was back in the days when GameSpot only reviewed PC games, so Resident Evil, Mario 64, or Crash Bandicoot didn't even stand a chance. But it did beat out competition on the PC from games like Civ 2, Duke Nukem 3D, and the original Quake. 1997 was a wonderful year for console games with games like Final Fantasy VII, GoldenEye, and more. But the game that took home the big prize was Cavedog's outstanding breakthrough real-time strategy game, Total Annihilation. A wonderful mix of old and new, the series has been in hibernation for an eternity now, but back in 1997 it was a staple of an increasingly popular RTS genre. Its 9.3 review beating out such PC classics as MDK, Tomb Raider 2, and the second Quake. Not a lot of Quake fans on the office back then, I guess. In 1998, GameSpot launched its sister site Video GameSpot to cover the ever-expanding console market, and so for a few years, the site gave 2 Game of the Year awards. So while the PC side of the site placed a ribbon on possibly the best point-and-click game of all time in Grim Fandango, one young reviewer on the console side had the gall to give out the site's first ever 10 out of 10 to a Nintendo 64 game, a game that would eventually win the site's console Game of the Year award for 1998. The reviewer, a young Jeff Gerstmann. The game, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. 1999 saw another 10 out of 10 win for the console Game of the Year, one of the best fighting games of all time, Soul Calibur. While a young Greg Kasavin, who would later go on to design a bunch of wonderful games in his own right, handed an 8.4 to the eventual winner of the PC GOTY, the timeless online role-playing game EverQuest. 2000 is a bit of an embarrassing one, to be honest, and home to the only 10 out of 10 I think we'd all agree shouldn't have been given a 10 out of 10. Even some of the people who worked on the site back then would agree that this was a bit of a misscore, but sadly, we cannot change the past, and the first console Game of the Year of the millennium went to the 10 out of 10 earning Chrono Cross. Yeah, I know. Much more respectable was the PC winner in The Sims, a series that would go on to sell well in excess of 125 million units over the course of its lifetime. 2001 was the final year GameSpot gave out 2 separate Game of the Year awards. The PC side awarding throwback first-person shooter Serious Sam: The First Encounter the coveted prize, beating out games such as Max Payne and Civilizations 3, while perhaps the best 2D to 3D conversion in video game history, the groundbreaking Grand Theft Auto 3, walked away with the console honors, even beating out Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, which grabbed a 10 out of 10 earlier that same year. 2002 saw a unified award go to the GameCube's Metroid Prime, garnering an outstanding 9.7 review score to boot, beating out a suite of similarly lauded games like Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Battlefield 1942, the first Splinter Cell, Morrowind, and Jedi Knight 2. The following year saw the second Game of the Year award for Nintendo's struggling console, this time by a cel-shaded little boy. The Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker picked up a 9.3 and top honors. In the same year we saw Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. I've been in a few Game of the Year debates during my 5 years here at GameSpot, but even I can't imagine how long the deliberations must have been back in 2004. This was the year of GTA San Andreas, Burnout 3, Halo 2, The Sims 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, KOTOR 2, Doom 3, Far Cry, and would you believe it, Half-Life 2. So what game could possibly beat out such stiff competition? I mean, it would have to be one of the best games ever made, a genre-defining classic whose effect can still be felt over a decade later. So maybe an HD remix of Chrono Cross? Nah, kidding. It was only bloody World of Warcraft. 2005 saw the console snatch back the GOTY after a 12-month sabbatical. And you know what? For a console that sold so badly, the GameCube has a bunch of Game of the Year awards on GameSpot. The latest and final being the outstanding Resident Evil 4. The halfway point in this list witnessed the arrival of the HD gaming generation, so it's no surprise that the poster boy of the world's most popular console took home the biggest honors. 2006's Gears of War was the first Xbox exclusive to win the award, beating out stiff competition from Oblivion and The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. The following year was a real barn burner for games, seeing the launch of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, Halo 3, BioShock, Assassin's Creed and Portal, but it was good old Nintendo who grabbed the honors again in 2007 with the outstanding Super Mario Galaxy. The first 10 out of 10 in 7 years, Grand Theft Auto 4 failed to take home the big prize in 2008. In fact, it was the second perfect score of that same year in Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, which did, taking home the big prize over a multitude of other classics, including Fallout 3 and Left 4 Dead. 2009 was a year of the classic sequel, with Modern Warfare 2, Uncharted 2, Left 4 Dead 2 and Assassin's Creed 2. But it was a brand new game, one that spawned its very own subgenre that took home the GOTY. From Software's Demon's Souls took home the biggest prize in gaming in 2009. Rockstar may have been bitter about losing out to MGS4 in 2010, but they got theirs 2 years later with a Game of the Year award for the outstanding cowboy 'em up Red Dead Redemption. Similarly, Bethesda, who may have hoped to win big back in 2006 with Oblivion, that game losing out to Twilight Princess, but in 2011 they finally got their reward with its sequel Skyrim, taking home the 2011 Game of the Year by the smallest of margins. I was on the call during the deliberations that year, one that went down to the wire against Valve's Portal 2. And while 2011's Game of the Year went to a massive game in which players can easily spend hundreds of hours, 2012's went to a much shorter experience. That game company's journey had such an impact on the staff, it beat out games like Halo 4, Far Cry 3, Borderlands 2 and Dishonored for the site's top honors. 2013's Game of the Year went to a handheld game for the very first time. The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds captivated the site's staff so much it managed to win Game of the Year ahead of Grand Theft Auto 5, BioShock Infinite and The Last of Us. It's fair to say throughout the years there have been a lot of Zelda fans at GameSpot. The next winner would have been a shock to anyone at the start of the year, but Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor managed to be one of the most surprisingly fun games of 2014. There was a lot of internal deliberation over which it or Dragon Age's Inquisition should take home the trophy, but in the end the emergent glory of the Nemesis system was just too fun to turn down. And so we reached last year, 2015, an incredible year for gaming where half a dozen games could easily have picked up the prize in a less competitive year. But as it turns out, Fallout 4, Bloodborne, Rocket League and Metal Gear Solid 5 all had to make way for the incredible final chapter in the story of Geralt of Rivia. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, an independent game out of Poland, was GameSpot's Game of the Year in 2015. So that was every game that's won Game of the Year over the past 2 decades on GameSpot.com. I'm sure there are some you agree with and some you don't, but this is just a small sliver of all the games we've played, reviewed and adored over the past 20 years here on GameSpot. Since 1996, games have exploded into new genres and new worlds we never could have imagined back in 1996. It's been an incredible ride, so here's to 20 more.